everyone, and thank you for joining Chat with Trina. Today, I had the awesome opportunity to sit and talk with Texas Senator Royce West, who is running for the U.S. Senate. He's running for the seat that is currently occupied by Senator John Cornyn. Hello, everybody, and thanks for watching Chat with Trina today. This is Trina, and I am so excited to be chatting with Senator Royce West, who has been a senator in Texas for 27 years. We're going to get some good education about this upcoming election. The cool thing is he's running for U.S. Senate, and he will be the first African-American senator from Texas since Reconstruction to hold a U.S. Senate seat. And the seat that he's taking is from Senator John Cornyn. And so we'll get into a little bit of about that later. But right now, I just kind of want to know where you're from and how did you start out?
Well, in terms of education, I graduated from high school in Dallas, Texas. In college, I've got my master's degree from the University of Texas at Arlington, and I got my law degree from the University of Houston. I've been in the Texas State Senate for the past 27 years. Prior to running for the Texas Senate, I ran for district attorney of Dallas County and was the first African-American to be a chief felony prosecutor there, as well as the first African-American to run for the office of a district attorney, and I was a Democratic nominee. So that's kind of my political history.
Okay, cool. Well, we're going to jump right in here. What is the importance, because we know about elections, most people talk about the presidential elections. So I'm going to ask, what is the importance of this position and why are you running?
Well, I'm running because, first of all, it's time that Democrats are able to elect a Democrat statewide. We hadn't had a Democrat elected in over 20 years. And when you begin to think about the composition of the Democratic Party, frankly, that African-American women are probably the main backbone of the Democratic Party. And so I've been appealing to women in terms of issues that are important to them and making certain that they have input into my decision-making process, especially as it relates to law, criminal justice reform, and a whole host of other issues that are important to women.
Wonderful. Okay. So I've worked in higher education at a community college as a matter of fact, for almost 20 years. I just recently started working for a school district, and I work with middle school students. During this time, I have spoken with, and my job has always been to talk to students about going and getting their college degree and how important that is. So recently, I was asking my middle schoolers about going to college. And one of my 8th graders said to me, "No, Miss Trina, I would like to go to college, but I don't think I can. My big sister is struggling now. She has to pay back loan." And it made me very sad. I did encourage her to, she's only 8th grade, but they already know at this age, the debt. So I want to ask you, what are your plans for making college affordable and accessible to all those who want to pursue a college education?
My granddad used to always tell me, you got to look at what a person's done in the past to see what they're going to do in the future, okay? So I want you to look at my record on this issue. The Uniform College Admissions Application, that was put in place by Royce West. Expanding grant opportunities. I worked with Rodney Ellis to create the Texas Tomorrow Fund, and also the Texas Grant Program. We've been working to make certain that private universities get additional federal money for students to go to school. And in terms of making certain that it's affordable, this past legislative session, I passed a bill that frankly requires universities to take courses that students take in community college that have been represented to them that would count towards a degree. Because what the problem is that sometimes they'll take a course in community college, go to a university, they say, "Oh no, you can't, we don't accept that course." Then they have to take it over again, which costs additional money. Mm-hmm. Lastly, Joe Biden, when he becomes president of the United States, we want to make certain that he has some concepts out there that I'm going to be supportive of. And those concepts deal with making certain that if someone makes over $135,000, less than $135,000, then trying to forgive that loan. To the extent, that's one concept. If someone is making less than $25,000 a year, then that would be forgiven. If someone's making between those two, then only 5% of the person's discretionary income would be, they would be able to use that towards paying interest and debt on the loan And after 20 years, the debt isn't paid, then the debt is canceled as long as the person has faithfully paid back the loans. So those are some of the things. Okay.
I was listening to a debate you did with MJ Hager, and I saw that you guys talked about community service. Me and my daughters, we always talk about we would definitely be in line for the community service to give back.
I think that you've got to turn around. We have a program now, a loan forgiveness program that has community service components in it, and we need to look at that and renew it.
Yes, absolutely. So I know that we have a $1.7 trillion student debt. We're in that much of student debt. So what are your plans to help college graduates with loan repayment, which you kind of covered that, because some can't even purchase homes because of that.
Trina, comes up to who he appoints as the Secretary of Education also. Because secretaries and the cabinets have a lot to do with proposed rules and regulations.
Okay.
All right? So I, as your U.S. Senator, will have input into that process in terms of whether that person is confirmed or not. So I'll work with the president on that. And we've got to make certain that these private loans that are guaranteed by the banks, we got to put a cap on how much they can charge on those interest rates also. So that's another thing.
That's absolutely. With COVID-19, light being shed on racial disparities and police violence against Black and brown people being brought to the forefront, you stated that 2020 has been a perfect historic storm. What did you mean by that? And what are some of the solutions that you plan to implement?
Let's start with COVID. We have never before in our life ever seen anything like this, okay? We're talking about a worldwide pandemic of the magnitude of over 130,000 people have died.
Yes.
Across the world. And then you look at what's going on right now in the United States and Texas. We see COVID reemerging again in this country. And so we've got to do several things. Number one, I think that we've got to recognize that when the World Health Organization says that there's a pandemic and it's spreading around the world, we've got to make certain that we become a member of that organization again. That's number one. Number two, we need to make sure we're actively involved, and that when we see these types of pandemic, that we're prepared here at home. We were caught unprepared. We had a president just said, "Oh, it's going to go away." You know what's
magically.
Magically, it's going to go away. And how stupid that is when the experts in his own administration told him otherwise. And so we've got to make certain that we are able to manufacture the equipment here in the United States as opposed to depending upon China, India, and those countries. Not only the equipment, but also the ingredients for the various drugs that are needed. They need to be manufactured here in the United States. We've got to have a stockpile of that equipment that with clear rules that they can be dispersed, as opposed to somebody saying they belong to the federal government. Okay, we've got to make certain that those manufacturing plants, that we put them in areas that are in need of economic development in urban centers and also rural areas. That stimulates development there. That says nothing about unemployment, which we'll talk about in 1 second. And we've got to make certain that people are able to get health care. You know, at the height of this thing, we had about 40 million Americans. We've got to make certain that Obamacare, the Affordable Health Care Act, stays the law of the land, and we improve upon it. And so that's on that end, and there's several other things I can talk about COVID. But when you begin to look at racial justice issues, we finally have gotten to a place in this country where about 76% of all Americans now recognize that racism exists. And the question becomes, what do you do about it? Remember I told you, look at a person's past, and you can tell what they've done in the future. Well, in my past, I've been fighting for civil rights. I've been in the courtroom fighting for civil rights, voting rights, those things. I'll put it like this. One of the first body camera bills passed in this country was passed by me, okay? Racial profile, I passed that in Texas. Worked with Rodney Ellis to pass the hate crimes bill in a Republican-dominated legislature. We were able to bring people together in order to get things done, okay? When you talk about education and civil rights, talk to the presidents of Prairie View and Texas Southern, and they'll tell you that Royce West has been right there with them to make certain that someone was standing up for what they needed in terms of funding from the state, okay? Lastly, in terms of employment, we know we had, like I said, almost 40 million people unemployed. Here's the situation, my friends. We're getting ready to start moving to a green new. We've got to make certain that those persons that are in line get the first opportunity to be employed in the green new economy. In terms of people, there are a lot of green new jobs right now. And it takes about 6 months to get the certification necessary to be prepared for those jobs. And so I want to see persons that are unemployed get that opportunity. In addition, Trina, persons who are listening to this or looking at this, that are unemployed, go to your Texas Workforce Commission offices. There are jobs available here in the state. There are probably 500,000 of them available in the healthcare industry. Now, I understand essential workers and stuff like that, but also the technology industry and other industries right now are offering jobs. So make sure you look at that information and see whether or not it's something that you desire to do.
Okay. Thank you. I'm just add one really quick question. Do you have any so I have a passion for people who have gone to prison and they get out and they can't get a good place to live. So they're put back into the type of atmosphere where they, what would you say about that? What have you done with that issue?
I mean, in terms of that particular issue, you're talking about the prison and workforce issue, okay? We've advocated to the private sector to make certain that the check the box legislation that we had. I was very supportive of that legislation to make certain that you don't prejudge people.
Right.
You don't prejudge people. Now, I understand that there's some offenses that you cannot avoid in terms of consideration of, but don't, if someone ends up with a possession of marijuana case, don't just automatically discard that person because it's a possession of marijuana case and it really has nothing to do with what that person would be required to do on the job. So we've been working on that. In fact, I have one of my staff persons in the Senate office, state Senate office, works on one of the commissions, works on the advisory task force with the parole board in order to assist persons to get back engaged in society.
Into the workforce. I heard you say that John Cornyn followed President Trump off the cliff.
He's following him off the cliff.
He's following him off the cliff. So what did you mean by that? And what would you do not to jump off the cliff?
Well, I mean, here's the deal. Everything the president stands for, John Cornyn is backed. Did you hear him saying it? You remember when this president said after Charlottesville, there were good people on both sides of the issue?
Oh, yes.
Did you hear John Cornyn say anything about that? No. Okay. When you begin to look at his shallow response to issues concerning George Floyd, you know what he decided to do? He wants to make Juneteenth a national holiday. Well, where you been for the last 20 years? This man wants to also to repeal Obamacare. Now, mind you, we got over 20 million people in this country that uses Obamacare for health care.
Absolutely.
He wants to appeal it, along with President Trump. Those are just some of the things that he's been doing that's inconsistent with Texas values, and most Texans don't agree with him. And hopefully, when I get ready to run against him in the fall, they will agree with me.
You are currently in a runoff with MJ Hager. What makes you the better candidate?
Well, it kind of depends upon if you're a Democrat, do you want a true Democrat? I've had the experience. Let's talk 3 things. Number one, I'm more experienced than MJ Hager. Hager has never held a public office. I have demonstrated results in education, health and human services, criminal justice, climate change, immigration issues, voting rights, procurement. I have demonstrated results. That's number one. Number two, I'm a true Democrat in the race. I have helped turn Dallas County blue. I've worked with the Democratic Party. I've helped candidates up and down the ballot. I'm on the executive committee of the Democratic Party. I'm on the DNC executive committee of the Democratic Party. I've always voted in the Democratic primary, okay? Now, MJ Hager on the other side has no legislative experience. She ran for one office, a congressional office. I salute her in terms of her service in the military, but she could make her mind what she wanted to be, a Democrat, a Tea Party, or a Republican. And so when you begin to look at her track record, she initially had used the Tea Party's flag, okay? She gave money to John Cornyn, who she wants to run against this fall. And then in 2016, of all the years in the world, 2016 presidential election, you know what? She decided to vote in the Republican presidential primary when Trump and all those other candidates were talking about doing what? Repealing Obamacare and also reducing a woman's right to choose. And so she voted there. And so the question is whether voters should take that into consideration. I think they should. And then make the decision as to do they want a true Democrat, someone who's worked the past 27 years, or someone that has no experience and still can't decide whether she's a Democrat or a Republican.
I guess it goes back to your earlier statement about see what someone's done in the past to tell what they're going to do in the future.
That's exactly right.
Yes. So many people wait for that big election in November, right? Can you quickly tell us, educate our viewers on why the local elections are so important, if not more important than the national?
My friends, government closest to the people is best for the people. Many decisions are made on the local level of government. Your mayor, very important in terms of setting the tone in your city. Your district attorney, very important in terms of whether or not they prosecute someone for a crime. Your county commissioners, your county judges, your city council, those are people in our community that, frankly, make very tough decisions. School board the same way. And you know how school board politics are. And so it's real important. Yes, being a U.S. Senator helps set the tone not only for Texas, but for the rest of the world. And the U.S. Senator's role is to obviously pass on legislation at the federal level, but also make certain that Texas gets the resources that it needs in order to be successful. Exactly what I do. With a Democratic president, even though I will be the junior senator, I'll have a lot of influence over what goes on in Texas, because they're going to need someone that's going to be able to help them out with different federal agencies. And I think they're going to probably come to me to ask for that support.
Okay. We've heard a lot about mail-in votes. Why are we hearing so much about that this year? Could you expound on that?
I mean, the reality is that with the COVID situation, people, and this being an election year, the question is, what is the best way to vote? By mail or in person? So there's a big debate about it. Okay. And so from that vantage point, just like Chris Hollins said there in Harris County, I'm mail-in ballots to everybody over 65 years of age. And so you're seeing an uptick in the number of mail-in requests right now and mail-in ballots because people are afraid of the COVID virus. The other piece is you're going to see a reduction in the number of voting centers because a lot of the people that work during the election are elderly. And I was talking to the elections administrator here in Dallas a couple of days ago. And she told me that they're going to have to close some of the centers down because they don't have enough people to work.
Right. Yes.
And so the mail-in process is the best process if we're going to protect public health. And for some reason, the Republicans don't want to do that. You have Trump sitting up there saying, there's a bunch of fraud, there's fraud. There's no fraud. You know, the military has been doing it all these many years, and there's been no fraud. Trump and his cronies have been voting by mail. I'll leave it. Okay. And so, you know, Americans, you know, we're supposed to be the #1 democracy in the world. We should be trying to make it convenient for people to participate.
For everybody to vote, yes.
Exactly, in this democracy.
Okay. My last question for you is the youth vote is very important. I get on the debates with like a ABC 13. Sometimes they have the little comments and I'm always on there debating with people. But anyway, our youth we don't give them enough credit. You know, they know a lot and they're really involved. So what would you tell young people when they ask, why should Royce be their choice?
The reason Royce should be their choice is because, number one, it shows that if you work hard, you do the things you need to do, you put yourself in a position to continue to work for the betterment of people, okay? And when they look back, they need to look back and see what I've done as it relates to young people. Do you realize that since I've been a senator, I've had over 3,000 internship opportunities for young people in college, okay? I just don't talk the talk, I walk the walk, okay? Some of the people that come through my internship program are now elected officials, okay?
Wow.
When you talk about someone that cares about the issue of student debt and loan forgiveness, Royce West. I've done those things. And I want to make certain that I continue to do those things and establish a pipeline so that young people can be involved in government. And I want people to understand this. Business is politics, and politics is business. And so having a pipeline so you can get experience in those particular polar opposites is very important. And I've established a pipeline so young people can work in my office, get the training, I guess, the experience that they need in order to make certain that if they want to become a public servant, then I'll allow them to do that. And I care about the issues that young people care about, as demonstrated by participation in some of the protests around the state and also the legislation that I've offered in the past.
Wonderful. You actually you started the first public university of Dallas.
That's right.
You helped with that?
That's exactly right. And the first public law school also.
Okay, awesome. Okay, well, again, Senator, thank you so much for taking this time to talk to me and give us a little bit of education. And if you want more information about Senator West, his website is www.roycewest.com. I think I know so much about him. I've seen all of his videos now, but he has done so much. So it'll be better for you to go in and look at his website and check him out. Guys, it's up to us now. We have to get out and vote. Let's turn this state blue. Early elections are going on now, and let Royce be your choice.
Please let Royce be your choice. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you again, Senator West, for taking the time out of what I know is a super busy schedule right now. Thank you for taking the time and feeling like we were important enough for you to talk to us not only about your campaign, but also about other issues going on in our country that we need to be aware of. Okay, guys, it's up to us. It's early voting time through July the 10th. Let's get out there, make your vote count. One last thing, don't forget to go to www.youtube.com/chatwithtrina. Watch some of my YouTube videos and remember to subscribe and click that little bell that will let you know when I upload a new video.